everybody, it's Sarah, and today's video is a if you like this book you might enjoy this book type of video with a little twist that I will get to in a second. But I've been meaning to make this type of video for a while now because I have this frustration bubbling under my skin whenever I see someone ask for adult high fantasy recommendations and the comments are the same 5 authors who are mostly white men. And it just frustrates me because it, you know, shows this image of the fantasy genre as a very one-sided genre, at least in terms of authors and at least in terms of who gets to tell the story. Which is somewhat true, but it's certainly not true if you start digging just a little bit. It's something that some fantasy fans do like to ignore, that there's other people in the fantasy genre writing stories. But yeah, so that is what I wanted to do in today's video. Today I wanted to give you some of the books that are quite often recommended if someone asks for adult high fantasy recommendations. And I wanted to give you an option of which book to maybe pick up instead of the other bestseller hyped book, a lot of times in my opinion overhyped book. So yeah, that's basically what we'll do in today's video, because I just really felt the need to sit down and do this after Brandon Sanderson got a ridiculous amount of money for his Kickstarter, which great for him, great for all the people who are hyped about it. I have my issues with Brandon Sanderson. I know it's like, it seems very extreme how I switched in the space of a year from Brandon Sanderson is my favorite author of all time to I am so over the dude. But that's not what this video is about, so I will try to hold back right now. But yeah, it's just seeing that once again made me be like, oh my god, the fantasy genre, both veteran fans as well as new fans, really need some new recommendations. Not even new recommendations, but just, you know, recommendations that are maybe not the most mainstream. And that's not to say that I don't have any mainstream authors here. I have some quite big names in my stacks, but I believe almost all of these books have way fewer reviews and ads on Goodreads than any of the big white men that I'm going to mention. And so this video is going to be for 2 groups of people. The first is veterans fans who can't seem to stop buying the same 5 authors over and over again, and to maybe encourage them to look outside of their comfort zone. And the second one is for new fantasy fans who maybe are frustrated that they get the same 5 recommendations over and over again because, you know, they want something that's not that. And so the way I'm going to do this is the books that I have chosen are a lot of times not really one-to-one comparable. What I have done, and you will understand better once I start doing it, I don't think I can really properly explain it, but what I've done is I have taken 1 or 2 aspects of a book, and maybe it's the setting, maybe it's the characters, maybe it's the writing, and I am going to say if you enjoyed this aspect of the book or if this aspect sounds interesting to you, then might I suggest this other book, which in my opinion a lot of times did it better, maybe it did it differently, maybe it did it the same, but in my opinion better. And so yes, that is basically what we're going to do in this video. And so let us start, and let us start with the big classic, the big name. Let us start with The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. So for this one I have chosen a book that, just like The Lord of the Rings, is quite a slow-paced book. That is a book where it's a lot about writing, and that is a book that is very rooted in British history and not necessarily British mythology, but you know, British history. I don't know how else to call it. And the book I chose was The Queens of Inishlia by Tessa Gretton. This book is a retelling of Shakespeare's King Lear, so there you do have, you know, the connection to British history, the connection to British culture, heritage, I don't know what else to call it. And this book is the story of 3 daughters whose father is slowly turning mad, And so when it comes time to pronounce one of the three daughters his heir, he asks all of them how much they love him, because he wants the one who loves him the most to be the heir. The two elder sisters, I believe, who obviously just want the power, lie to him. They actually hate him, but they lie to him and say, oh my god, I love you so much. And the youngest daughter, however, won't play the game because she actually loves him, and because of that she is then exiled. And so we follow the three sisters, we follow the three of them in their development and as they change, and it's just a very, you know, character focused story. I'm not sure if I would call it character driven, but you know, it's very much a story that is about the small decisions and about how those decisions influence the characters. And so while I don't think it's directly comparable to The Lord of the Rings, I do think that there are quite a few elements in this book that you might enjoy if you have also enjoyed The Lord of the Rings. So I just turned my light on a bit more if the lighting is a bit different. But the next book I have is The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, and the book that I would recommend if you enjoyed this one is the Black Jewel series by Anne Bishop. These two series are, once again, very different. However, both of them are, first of all, Chosen One stories. Both of them are Chosen One stories where the Chosen One very much does not want to be the Chosen One. And the element where I would mostly compare the two of them is that both of them have very strong roots in, you know, gender discussions, gender dynamics, where a lot of the story is about the gender dynamics, and both of them are kind of slightly, well, not slightly actually, both of them are very gender essentialist books. So, you know, that's something that I do find negative about both of them. But if you regardless found the gender dynamics and the gender discussions interesting in this book, I would still recommend The Black Jewels, where I do really prefer the gender dynamics, because where in this one it's all about men against women, and where, you know, men constantly try to play down how powerful women are, and women constantly want to try to show how stupid men are, and it's just a constant fight over power and over supremacy. In this one, it's all about working together, and of course you sometimes have conflicts between men and women that are conflicts because one party is a man and one party is a woman. However, ultimately it's just, you know, it's working together in the best way possible, and it's about complementing each other in your strengths and weaknesses. And so yeah, that's why I think you should pick up this book if you enjoyed this one. Or well, I guess what I'm really saying, if the gender politics in this one interest you or interested you, then maybe the gender politics in this one might interest you as well. Moving on to a book that was probably the most difficult for me to find, you know, a counter book to, and that is the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. More specifically, just the first trilogy, because I have not yet continued on with the series. And what I decided to go with is Jade City, or The Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, which I have not yet finished. I've only read the first two books so far. But the reason why I thought you might enjoy this one if you enjoy this one is because both of them are books that follow characters that ultimately are not necessarily good people. And they do a lot of, you know, fucked up shit. But ultimately also you fall in love with the characters in both series and you root for them regardless. Also, both of them kind of have a bit of a grim, dark twist. Although I would say that Jade City, although it's less obviously grimdark, well, this is, you know, this has the grimdark aesthetic. It's the blood, it's the darkness, it's the no hope shit. This one is much more so because a lot of times you really have the feeling like there is no good outcome to any of the situations in this series. So I feel like this follows the grimdark sentiment much more, even though it is an urban fantasy aesthetic. And so yeah, that's why I would say if you enjoyed this one, pick up this one. Next I have Patrick Ruffus, and for this one I chose the aspect of the writing because, to be honest, with Patrick Ruffus I don't think the story itself is that unique. I mean, you do have, you know, the element of the main character telling his own story, which you also get in another book that I'm going to be talking about later on, but ultimately, I think the writing is really what makes this book usually stand out. And so the author I decided to go with is Nevernight, who, you know, writes a lot shorter books than Patrick Ruffus. And obviously the high fantasy books that I have are the 2 novellas in the Singing Hills series. But Nevernight as well is just an author where storytelling is front and center in her books. The Singing Hills novellas, for example, do follow a storyteller as they go and collect different stories, and Nevernight's writing is just impeccable. It's just so pretty, so gorgeous. And so I definitely think it's okay to say, if you enjoy Patrick Ruffus, if you enjoy the writing of Patrick Ruffus, you might also enjoy Nevernight, because Nevernight's writing style is also just very, very beautiful. Next I have the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski, and this one I decided to compare to the Burnt Empire saga by Asher K. Banker. And the reason why I decided to compare these two to each other is because both of these series are very rooted in their own specific folklore and mythology. The Witcher series, of course, is Eastern Europe as well as Polish folklore. I mean, Poland is part of Eastern Europe, but you know what I mean. Whereas the Burnt Empire saga is a series that is inspired by the Mahabharata and Hindu mythology. And the other reason why I decided to compare these two is because these two series, in my opinion, have a somewhat similar way in which they are told, where a lot of times it feels like it's not the characters themselves telling the story, or the story is not very character focused, but where we're told a lot of times from the outside what is happening and what has happened. So yeah, I think if you enjoyed the Witcher series, you might also enjoy Upon a Burning Throne and the Burnt Empire series. Continuing on, we have the Nevernight series by J. Kristoff, and this one I decided to pair with A Chorus of Dragons by Jen Lyons. First of all, both series have a bisexual main character. Actually, A Chorus of Dragons has multiple bisexual main characters, and in my opinion, in here the queerness is better written than in here, because in here it sometimes feels a little bit voyeuristic. Maybe that's just me though. And the other reason why I decided to choose these two is because both of these series are quite humorously written, and both of them have someone narrating the books. Well, in the case of A Chorus of Dragons, it's multiple someones who provides footnotes with additional information. Although I do think that in A Chorus of Dragons it's way better done, and it makes way more sense in universe who is writing the stories and why they know what they know and why they can provide footnotes. Also, the humor in the footnotes in this one is way better in my opinion, or well, it fits my humor way better compared to J. Kristoff and Nevernight, where a lot of times I felt like the information we got in the footnotes was quite unnecessary and I didn't really see the point of it. So yeah, but that's why I paired these two books to each other. Next, let's get a big one out of the way, the Mistborn series as well as the Broken Earth series by Brandon Sanderson. The reason why I compare these two is most obviously the setting. Both of them are set in a world where there's, you know, ash raining from the sky either constantly or, you know, interspersed with times of break. And this one, however, is a lot more post-apocalyptic than Mistborn is. And then the other reason why I would compare the two of them is that both of them are series that very much built on each other, like the books built on each other, and there's a lot of hints to twists to come down the line. So that is also something that both of them have in common. However, if you want a book that has a bit more complexity, that has a bit more of a discussion about social issues, that works with themes a lot, and that has also gorgeous writing, then I would definitely go with the Broken Earth series over the Mistborn series. I did not intend to throw that much shade, but it just happened. I'm sorry. Another big one is, of course, A Song of Ice and Fire, and this one I decided to pair with The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. The reason why I decided to pair both of these is that both of these are books that span a very long time, although The Dandelion Dynasty spans a bit more of a longer time compared to A Song of Ice and Fire. But both of these are very, very political fantasy series. Both of these are fantasy series where you have a lot of military strategy as well. And so I just decided that the two of them are a very, very good fit if you enjoy that type of fantasy. Like, I am pretty sure if you enjoy A Song of Ice and Fire, you will also enjoy The Dandelion Dynasty, especially again if you enjoyed the political machinations and so on. The next one is a book I do not own anymore, and that is the Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. I only read the first book in this one, and I have to be honest, I don't remember too much aside from that I didn't like it when I read it. And so what I'm gonna compare it to is the premise, because the Rook and Rose series has a very similar premise to The Lies of Locke Lamora. Both of these books are set in a city that has a lot of canals, that has a lot of water, that is very Venice reminiscent. Although in this one, at least, I know that the inspirations for the city weren't just Venice, but you know, a lot of different cities all over the world that are built on the water. And also in both of the books, your main character is a street urchin who now in the current times has turned into a con artist and who is kind of trying to trick people. And in Ren's case, in our main character's case here, that means trying to trick her way into one of the noble families of the city, so you know, she can get off the streets. But yeah, as I said, don't remember that much of The Lies of Locke Lamora, aside from that I did not like it when I read it, and that this was one of my favorite books of 2021. So definitely go with this one. Also, queer characters. And lastly, of course, we gotta go with The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And there I have two books actually that I think a lot of people will think of are quite different from The Way of Kings. However, I think in the elements that I'm talking about, and if you like those elements in The Way of Kings, these other books are better. The first thing I want to talk about is trauma and mental health. The Way of Kings does have a lot of characters dealing with mental health, and I do think generally, from what I gather, it is quite well done. I do like Kaladin's depression arc and how it's dealt with. I can't say that much about Chalan because I personally do not know that much about DID, so I don't know if it's a good representation of DID within a fantasy setting. However, something that is missing for me within The Way of Kings is how the current stuff that is happening all the time is influencing the characters. And for that, even though I don't like her books, and I would say I like The Way of Kings better than these books, I think Robin Hobb is way better at depicting trauma and depicting how stuff that is happening has a constant influence on the character and the character development. Also, the Farseer trilogy was the series that I meant with the series that, you know, follows one character telling their story, and in that way is quite similar to Patrick Rothfuss and the Kingkiller Chronicles, even though it has quite a different tone. So yeah, that was the first one I wanted to mention. And then on the other hand, Brandon Sanderson, of course, is very known for his characters and for his character work. But if you want great character work in adult high fantasy, I would rather go with The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang, because what M.L. Wang does is include way more of the social situation and how that influences the character and the character development and how the characters interact with each other, which is usually sorely lacking in any of Brandon Sanderson's books, because that guy does not know how to write social structures, which in M.L. Wang the scale is way smaller, and she still manages to include way more of social structures and how that influences characters interacting with each other in her book. So definitely, if you're interested in good character work, in amazing character work, in complex characters who even in a short amount of time go through tremendous character development, pick up The Sword of Kaigen. And that was it for this video. That was it for me telling you, if you enjoyed these aspects of these books, might I suggest you pick up these books also / instead. And so if you have any thoughts on the pairings that I had in this video, do you think they fit? Do you think they don't fit? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Could I maybe interest you in some of the books that I talked about? Tell me in the comments down below as well. Do you have some other pairings? Do you have some pairings that maybe I didn't consider, that maybe are some books that I should consider reading? Also tell me in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where I read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman or genderqueer person per month, will be left linked down below as well. And so with all of that said, I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!